Hello, my Aloha tribe, and welcome to the Aloha Perspective, where you get a little bit of something and a whole lot of everything. Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, and I don't even know what happened with my hair there. But anyways, so I'm still deciding at the moment what we are going to do today, whether it's the affirmators or the lovely book. But for now, because my brain is still all over the place, I need a card. So we're going to pull a card. Yes, we are. Good morning, older sibling. I can't believe you are awake. So last night, because older sibling is a Dodger fan, and I guess that one, no. So older sibling is a Dodger fan. That freaking game, okay? I didn't think I had a TV in my room, but I guess I downloaded the app to put TV in my room. And the Dodgers and the Blue Jays, holy moly, they went rounds. I mean, they went rounds, okay? By the time that game finished, it was almost 3 o'clock in the morning in Toronto. So to all you Blue Jays fans who stayed up just to have your heart broken, wow. Kudos to you, all right? The Dodger fans got enough sleep. So, but anyways, congratulations to the older sibling. Her team won game 3. Come on, card, come out. So guys, I'm only pulling a card right now, but we are going to do the book because I have a topic I really, really want to talk about. And there, oh, finally. And I think it's just important. So, good morning, Muddy. So anyways, I apologize about my throat. I think I talked about this yesterday that, so apparently the ear, nose, and throat, which we all know there's ENT doctors, are all connected by one tube, I found out. I had no idea it was just one tube, but it makes sense. I don't know how many tubes are in my throat. I haven't looked in there and counted them. But anyways, so while my ear heals, a lot of the fluid is not coming out of my ear. It's going down my throat, which is fine with me because I get itchy ears anyways. So, anyway, so that means, seriously, we had this one already. That was the sex magic. Anyway, you know what? Let's just go to our subject. We'll pull an Aloha card. You know what? No. Let's do a dragon card, okay? Let's do a dragon card because I'm feeling the dragons. I thought I was feeling the unicorns, but the unicorns betrayed me. So we're going to do the dragons. It's so dramatic. Anyways, all right. I know, you're like, why are you wasting your time? Just get to the subject. We will get to the subject, I promise. But it's a bit heavy and it's a bit deep. And it's not intended to be anything more than awareness. Because we're going to talk about mental health awareness. But let's see. The receiver. Oh, look at that tiny little dragon. I swear to you, we had this card last time, the receiver, but we got it again, so let's blow. Dragons have no problem with amassing wealth. You could learn a thing or two from them today. Whether that wealth comes in the form of financial opportunity, unexpected help, gifts, a generous offer, or an unanticipated kindness, your power and prowess depend on flexing your receiving muscle. There is no room here to question deservedness. As with all magical creatures, you deserve every good and lovely thing this world and all the others can provide. Receive freely and experience the wealth that true reciprocity can bring. So there you go. I don't know who needed to see that card, but like I said, I felt very compelled to do a card today. So whoever needed that card and whoever needed reassurance that life is going to be okay, there you go. All right. So let's see. I'll put the affirmators back on top for tomorrow. Well, tomorrow is Self-Care Wednesday, isn't it? All right. I got a subject. Now, I want to preface this with just a little tiny note because I'm not here to throw anybody under the bus, all right? But I need it as an example, and I'm going to use my father as an example. So there are times when we watch things, and I'm going to mention my dad a few times in this because it, what am I trying to say? I'm going to mention my dad a few times in this, but not in a mean way. Just, he's kind of point A, and we're going to talk about point B and everything in the middle, okay? And so point A is kind of all the people that really don't understand, excuse me, don't really understand mental health, remind me to never poke my ear again, okay? Please, thank you. So we're going to make point A, the people who, know of mental illness, or I don't want to say illness because I hate that word when it comes to mental stuff, but mental health. Those who don't, and those who don't really understand the dinged up mental health, and those who have it, whatever part of the umbrella that they fall under. So, all right. So I think going forward, Shelly Marie should be drinking tea in the morning. So just to keep everything going in there. So anyways, I want to talk about PTSD and mental health awareness. I got this from ptsd.va.gov, and it makes sense that it was on the VA website. But I think when we think of PTSD, we initially think of military, right? Because they've been through wars, they've been through battles, but, and prolonged exposure to a lot of scary and sad stuff. But PTSD isn't just about the military. PTSD is a human thing, okay? It's a human thing all the way around. Even animals can have PTSD. And you're like, what? Imagine you are a dog, okay? And we see this a lot, right? And you are abused, or a cat and you are abused, or a horse and you are abused, any kind of animal, and you were just mistreated, treated horribly, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a new home that's safe, but you don't know how to trust them. You can't communicate, right? Because you don't speak the same language, and so you might get a little defensive. You might feel like you're backed into a corner, even if they're just, coming up to you, smell my hand, no, I trust you, I'm not going to hurt you. And it's just a dance of learning to trust one another. And in the same respect, we can use that same idea with mental health awareness and people that don't understand mental health, because, we don't speak the same language. We are unable to communicate, sometimes it's just hard to really explain what you're going through. And, people just don't understand it, or they think you should get over it, or they think you should have been through it already. And it doesn't necessarily work that way, okay? Because trauma hides itself. And I know we've talked about, trauma on the whole, like abuse and sexual abuse and maybe domestic violence, but we forget about the trauma of like car accidents or losing somebody in a violent way. So, for instance, we'll use older sibling and PTSD. We'll start with her. In 1979, she had a very horrible accident. If she hadn't known how to drive a horse trailer, which back in those days, guys, not everything is so easy like it is now. Good morning, Allie. Or I'm sorry. Good afternoon, Allie. So anyways, so she was driving, and even the officer said, wow, how did you manage to control the car? And she's like, well, I drive a horse trailer, because she used to be a horse trainer and a competitor until the accident. But even now, sometimes we'll be watching like a movie, and if there's just this random car crash in the movie, sometimes she'll jump. And it gets better over time. But I mean, we're talking X amount of years later, right? We're talking almost 40 years later, and it still affects her, because these are things that happen. Or when you're driving on the street and you see someone run a red light, it's like, whoa, you have to take a deep breath. So it's not that it's not healed. It's just sometimes sometimes the trigger happens, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, she'll be watching a movie and nothing. And other times it could be just so violent, it's kind of like, and it takes her breath away. So, the reason I'm talking about this is, I was watching Criminal Minds. Okay. I know I get a lot of good stuff from Criminal Minds, but I was watching Criminal Minds last week, and there was an episode where they were dealing with, this one case that they had to revisit. And during that time, when they were revisiting, when the initial case was happening, one of their team members had gotten, kind of duped and then shot. All right. And this caused her a lot of PTSD because they were revisiting this case. And because it was kind of like a copycat thing, which it wasn't, but her PTSD really kind of just exploded. Okay. And my dad's just like, it's been 10 years. She needs to get over it. And I'm all like, how do I explain this to him? That triggers happen. You know, I mean, even she mentioned, you know, I thought I was over it. I thought I got through it. And then here we are now. And, you know, I'm struggling and I don't know why I'm struggling. And even she was kind of baffled by it. But that's how mental health works. And you don't have to have a dinged up mental health to have PTSD. It's just another beautiful part of the umbrella, right? Except this one you can move through. This one you can figure out how to get through and how to manage it. And with all mental health, you can figure out how to get through it and manage it. But there's also another one called CPTSD. And CPTSD is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, a lot of people don't like the disorder part because, you know, they're trying to change it to PTSS, which is post-traumatic stress syndrome. But because it's not a disorder. But and in a way, it's a mental disorder of sorts, like you're out of order, you know, just for a time being until you're able to kind of swing back and you know, get back into your head. But like I said, again, no offense to my dad, but the reason I'm using him is because he's not the only one out there. There's a lot of people out there and you hear them and going, oh, why don't they just get over it? And it's like, because it's a trigger. And I tried to explain this to him and he's like, well, I just don't get it. But, you know, my father also grew up in an era of push everything down. You know, push everything down, don't deal with it. Or that's how we deal with it, we push it down. And for the most part, he does deal with a lot of things. It just kind of comes out in little bits and pieces, right? You know, just kind of like letting off steam. And, you know, whether it's complaining about a commercial or complaining about some character in a show. And I tried to tell him, I said, well, you know, I think this is how you deal with it because, you know, that's how you let off steam. And so you're not internalizing it. And yet there's other people in this world who have internalized things. They were so ashamed of things that they went through that they internalized it and then poof, they got sick. And I'm not saying that shoving all this down is what makes you sick. It's the stress on the body. Because you're trying so hard to maintain instead of healing something. And PTSD is healable. So, this is what I found on their site. June is PTSD Awareness Month. PTSD can affect a lot of people, veterans and civilians alike, from survivors of wars, sexual assault, an accident, or domestic violence. And also natural disasters. That's got to be a doozy. What is PTSD? It's normal to have upsetting memories or have trouble after a certain type of event. It may even be hard to do normal activities, but you start to feel better, or most do, after a few weeks or months. On the flip side, if it's been over a month and you're still having symptoms, it could be PTSD, and the sooner you seek help, the sooner you can get better. So triggers, years later is possible, and sometimes it just takes a grounding. Okay, so this is what I wrote. So triggers, years later is possible, and sometimes it just takes a grounding force to stabilize, even if you're healed. Healing just means, in my humble opinion, you respond better and don't let it consume your life. Healing doesn't make it disappear. You just learn the tools, you know, to deal with it. Whatever happened to you that was traumatic in your life, it doesn't just magically disappear when you heal. It's still there. But when you heal, you don't let it haunt you. You don't let it follow you like a shadow everywhere you go. You don't turn around expecting it to be standing there like this with a knife, the proverbial or magical imaginary knife going, I'm going to get you, you know, like Psycho. Okay? No. With healing, you're learning how to tame it. You know, it's like taming a feral animal. You're just saying, look, inner child. We'll call it the floof, right? That was my trauma, was my floof, my inner child. And yes, and see, Allie says she has CPTSD. I do too. And I've worked through it. I've managed it. And, you know, and thank you, Allie, for saying that, because a lot of people won't say it. A lot of people will just not be honest about it, or they'll hide it because they're ashamed. And I'm proud of you for sharing that, because, you know, it's not anything to be ashamed of. You know, we didn't ask for the things that happened to us to happen to us. Now, if you're in the military, you're like, well, you joined the military. Well, yeah, but, you know, I think a lot of times people join because, you know, it's a way to go to college. And then all of a sudden, poof, a war breaks out around you and you're like, uh-oh. And then you come back, you know, and it just happens. Oh, you know, then I'm glad you're here today, because I'm here if you need to talk, Allie. All right. Suppressing it is not good. I do firmly believe that suppressing it can lead to chronic pain, because it's stress on your body. So, you know, but, you know, you and me, we also follow a different mental aspect when it comes to like energy and just magical stuff. So, you know, yeah, I am here. All right. But, I was a suppressor of my PTSD for a very, very, very long time. After my mom died, I don't think I intended on going on a healing journey, but I thought, well, what the hell? 'Cause I got to heal, you know, losing mom. And then Sissy Joe died, and it was like someone threw me into a cyclone, a tornado of feelings, just kind of spinning and spinning and spinning. And the only way I was able to, you know, try to stop spinning was to try to ground myself. And the only way to ground myself was to start a healing process. And it took me years and years and years. It took me a lot longer than I think it should have, in my personal opinion, because I was afraid. I was afraid to reface feelings that I had. I was afraid to face the past that I had to go through and that I had mildly suppressed in the back of my head and just kind of locked away, hoping it would just stay there forever. But I was a person that used to lash out. I was a hurt person that hurt people. And I didn't want to be that person anymore. Now, I'm not saying everybody's like that. Some people just suppress, and then, you know, like older sibling, you know, has become a people pleaser. And I apologize for calling you out on that. And she'll admit it, you know, she'll admit that she is. And I think that's the other spectrum, right? You either are the one that lashes out and a people pleaser, or you're just a straight people pleaser and you let people walk all over you. And forgive me, because I love you. You know I do. And I do try to put the kibosh on that. But I was one of those people too. And, oh, Sammy says, my friend and I were talking about this very thing yesterday. Ooh, see? I'm glad I didn't bring it up yesterday. I was going to bring it up yesterday, but something told me wait for Sammy. So I did. I waited for Mudalicious to come on. So, there is a book, The Body Keeps the Score. And for the life of me, I can't think of the name of the author. I believe he's Swedish, but he did a very extensive study on all this stuff. Sibling, no problem. It is what it is. Heal it. Heal it. Both of you. I am a recovering people pleaser, which means I still tend to do it from time to time, and maybe a lot without realizing it. But this is why we're here, right? This is why we're here. We're here to help each other heal. And we're here to really kind of get it out there that mental health awareness is so absolutely important for all of us. You know, I mean, whether you have a ding at mental health or not, it's good to understand the people that do. And we can't just say, oh, why aren't they over it yet? Now, here's the interesting thing about the episode. Okay, so Penelope, who's my favorite character on the show because she's so quirky and I feel like she is my spirit animal, she was the one that had gone through the trauma. And this was, you know, and she was the one revisiting the trauma. And she was spiraling. She was spiraling hard. And for a person who, you know, always tries to present themselves as together, who's their tech wizard and everything, I think it was just something that came so far out of left field. Yes, thank you. Bessel van der Kolk. Great book. Great book. All right. If you Google hard enough, you can actually find it free online. If you can't, you know, if you don't have the money to buy it. So, it is an excellent read. And he, you know, it's kind of a slow read, but he goes through all these different things, and he's really kind of the person that put the name of PTSD on there. and he was working with a lot of people in the VA, believe it or not, regarding this. And I've actually known other people that I've talked to that have read this, and I'm like, what? They're all, have you read this book? And I'm like, yeah, I didn't know, you read it. So, see, Allie just bought that book. So there you go. It is a very good read. Like I said, it's a little slow, but I like it because it really kind of, it goes deep. So, just take your time, read your coffee, do it while you're in the bathroom, whatever it is, wherever you're going to have the best concentration, read the book. It is fabulous. So anyways, what was I saying? I totally forgot. But anyway, so with Penelope, and she was spiraling, and, she was just not happy being out of control. She was lashing out at everybody. And so they brought her best friend back in, who had left the show already. Who had left the team. But they brought him in. And they were, and on the show, they were really kind of best friends. And that just stabilized her, that balanced her, that put her back straight. And sometimes that's all it needs. That's all we need, is that person that, it's not that we don't trust everybody else, but sometimes there is that one person who is a grounding force in your life that just reminds you that everything is going to be okay without actually saying that everything is going to be okay. And, I know we all have that person. I have several. Older sibling is obviously one of them. The girls on here, sometimes when I'm having a really bad day, I'll wake up and go like, I really don't want to do the show today, but I figure if I have an ounce of will in me, I will do it, because I like the support. Because I know I can be open and talk, and just, they don't have to say anything. They're just there. Or sometimes I'll just call older sibling like, oh my God, and be dramatic about it, which I can be very dramatic. But I'm a Capricorn. It comes naturally. But so as I've said, this isn't so much about let's explain what PTSD is to everybody. This is more about how do we bring the awareness to people. I just sat there I just said to my dad, you really don't understand mental health, do you? And he's all like, well, no, not really. And he's all, he didn't really know what to respond with. And I told him, I said, I understand that. And I said, and it's okay. Because I said, I get why you don't get why she's going through this. And, he's all, well, why is she? And, and I didn't want to give him the whole long oratory because we were watching the show. But I just told him, I said, these are what they call triggers. These are things that you think you have pushed down and forgotten about, but they're not completely healed yet. And triggers will consistently come up until they're healed. You'll sit there and go, geez, this again? But instead of saying, oh my God, it's this again, you're like, geez, this again? What the hell? And maybe you don't notice it, but you've had a change of attitude. Because it's not like, oh my God, I don't want to deal with this again. I don't want to think about this. This time you're like, wow, seriously, again? All right, let's do this. And you jump right in and you're like, oh. And then later you read something or you hear something or someone says something to you and they're like, oh yeah, that was just to see how far you've come. And look at you. You came far. And you did. That's what triggers are. And the more that we get this out there, the more that we help people understand what triggers are, the more we can help people understand mental health. This is what mental health awareness is all about. It may only have 1 month, right, for mental health awareness, and 1 month for suicide prevention, and 1 month for PTSD, but every day is Mental Health Awareness Day, whether you have a dinged up mental health or not, because you might be dealing with somebody. Or you might have someone who's going through what I call a situational mental health episode. And to me, that's just a made-up term I came up with, where I don't really think they struggle with their mental health, but they might be going through something that is situational, that's causing them this mental health episode. And then after it kind of just passes, they'll go back to normal, right? But those of us with a dinged up mental health, sometimes the struggle is real. For many, every day the struggle is real. Getting out of bed can take energy. I have a Finch app. Okay. It's called Finch, but it's a little burb, BIRB, and you raise the burb. It's a little bird. It's a bird, but they call it a burb. All right. You can name it, you can design it, you can dress it. And as you go along, you earn different rewards, you earn different things. But for me, she's kind of become like she's kind of, for me, become the technological floof. And I check in with her every day. I check in with all the things that I need to do to keep myself, have I checked in with my mental health today? Did I, do my breathing today? Have I meditated today? Read a chapter, write X amount of pages in a book. It's all things that keep you aware. Because sometimes I think what happens, and again, this is just my opinion from what I've experienced in myself, on those days when you just don't want to get out of bed, it's not always because you don't want to face the world, and it's because you don't have the energy to face the world. You're just like, you know what, I really can't deal with all this today, and nobody out there understands me. I can't just have a moment at my desk where, I'm just like, don't. Because, if you have a look on your face, are you okay? And then, you want to say something, but in your heart that they're probably not going to understand, or they're just going to be like, oh, well, you'll be okay. I remember on my desk, when I was having a really bad day, I would just say, super busy, please don't bother me. And I would tape it to my phone, because I didn't have an office. I just had a desk. And I would tape it to the front of my phone, and they'd be like, oh, what's this? Oh, okay. But if you need anything, let me know. And on occasion, sometimes they'd bring me coffee or tea. I had one friend in the office, one of my closest friends. She would bring me tea, and she would put little hearts in them. And she's like, here, I thought you could use some tea. Because she knew. And she would always give me that knowing look, like she knew. She's like, but if you need to talk, my office door is open. It's like, okay, thanks. And she'd be like, but are you okay? And it's like, I'm just having one of those days, one of those episodes. And she's like, okay. She's like, okay. And she got it. She understood. But out of 27 people, that was one person. Even some of my other closest friends were just kind of like, huh? And some of them tried. But it's not always easy, because unless you know somebody with a dinged up mental health, you have no idea how to deal with it. You have no idea, or if you have a dinged up mental health, you don't know how to deal with it, because we don't prepare people for this. And it's really not something that you can prepare anybody for. As much as we would love to, it's hard. It's hard because everybody's different. The mental health umbrella is a very vast umbrella. There are so many different diagnoses, and then there's a diagnose that has become something else now, and sometimes it's hard for me to keep up. I'm just like, whoo, thank you for just giving me run-of-the-mill straight depression. Okay, yes, I have major depressive disorder. That's my diagnosis, MDD. I have letters. I have letters behind my name, MDD. Because my name's not long enough, right? But yeah, and it's okay. Major depressive disorder. And people look at me and they're all, you have depression? It's like, yeah. And I've learned how to manage it. Not control it. I can't control it. It can't be controlled, at least for me. But I manage it. Sometimes I do a better job at managing it than other times. Sometimes I just fall apart. And sometimes when I know I need it, I allow myself to fall apart. But as I'm falling, I will also call older sibling to ground me, or I'll text Muddy to ground me and just say, look, what, I'm spiraling and I've got to let this happen, but I just wanted to let you know because I need to make sure that someone is going to check on me so that I do not keep falling. When you start to spiral, there never feels like there's a bottom. And I think that's what we're always waiting for. We're all waiting for that bottom, for us to hit that bottom, right? But when you have a dinged up mental health, and I don't know if this is for everybody, but definitely for me. And honestly, I think I'm just learning this about myself. I'm always thinking like, when does it stop? And I realized just now when I said it, that I'm always waiting to hit bottom. But there is no bottom in my spirals. It's just, like I said, it's like being in a tornado of emotions, and you're just spinning and spinning and spinning. You're going up, you're going down, you're going up, you're going down, you're stuck in the middle. You're that cow, right? You're that cow from Twister that just keeps going by the truck. And you're like, what is happening? You're just kind of, and I'm not making fun of it. I see the cow in my head right now, just doing the spinny thing. In fact, I have a meme on that, and it was so funny. Like, it says, sometimes I just feel like the cow in the movie Twister. And that's true. That is very true. So I think when it comes to mental health awareness, when you see a show and maybe you're a person that doesn't have a dinged up mental health. If you see a show and you're like, oh, why aren't they over it yet? I want you to remember this conversation that we've had today. Okay? And it's not to shame you, because I don't think shaming anybody really helps, right? If we try to shame someone who doesn't understand mental health, all we're going to do is put them off from wanting to learn more about it or be more open to understanding. We're going to put them on the defensive. So what we do is we just say, hey, I understand. You don't understand. I mean, I think one of the most profound things I ever said to my father was years ago when he was trying to understand my mental health. And I said, let me put it this way. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. And his only reply was, wow, that is bad. And I said, yeah. And he tries, and that's why I said I was trying to do the disclaimer at the beginning that this is no offense to my dad. I just really needed an example, because he is a good example, because I think sometimes, like my mom didn't want to talk about it, and I think maybe she felt responsible for it. My dad doesn't talk about it, and I don't know if he feels responsible for it or not, but it's no one's responsibility. It's just something that happened to me. And it turns out it wasn't because of my trauma. It's just, this is how my brain was built. The trauma just exacerbated everything. And honestly, one of the hardest things that I ever had to do was transition from thinking that it was a situational thing, healing that, and then realizing, shit, I still have depression. What is happening? I thought this would be done with. I hit such a low when that happened, because I've seen how people with mental health issues get treated. And I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to be the person that was understanding. I wanted to be that person that said, hey, you know what? It's okay. Give me your hand. We'll walk through this together. But I didn't want to be the person who also needs their hand held. Until I realized one day, you know what? Maybe this happened to me so I can talk about it. Maybe this happened to me so I can share my experiences, so that I can share my story, so that other people can heal their own. And this is why sometimes I bring up a lot of my own stuff, because I've been through it all. My life is like a freaking epic serial movie, okay? Or a TV series. It just keeps going and going and going. And you're like, oh, what's Shelly Marie up to now? But you know what? I don't mind anymore. I used to be embarrassed, or I felt like maybe my ego was getting in the way, because I do tend to talk about a lot of my own experiences. But I realize now I am trying to be relatable, and the Aloha Perspective it's more than just about being Hawaiian. It's about putting love and everything back into community. It's about putting yourself on the front lines and going, hey, you know what? You don't get to touch the people behind me if you don't understand, but you should stop and try to learn. Because I do get very protective of the people that are struggling in their own healing. I do get very protective of the people that, don't realize that they're going through a mental health episode. And they sit there and they spiral, and I can't tell them, hey, I think you have depression. I've tried that and it doesn't work. And it's not that I did it on purpose. I was trying to be helpful, and I realized people have to figure this stuff out on their own. Like with Allie, when Allie said that she's a suppressor, there's nothing to be ashamed of about that. I think sometimes we suppress because we don't have people that we trust to start the healing process with. And I know you're like an entire ocean and a continent away. You really are. It's not just I'm not only across the continent, I'm across the ocean. So, but I'm here. I'm here because I know you bought the book. I know you have the shadow book. And, sometimes it's what we need. We just need that solid support group that's not going to judge us, that's not going to make us feel like we're stupid, that's not going to make us feel bad, that's not going to make us feel guilty for bringing it up. And if anybody makes you feel that way, please just try to show a little empathy towards them. I know you're like, wait, I'm the one that needs the empathy, because they don't understand. And I realize now that a lot of my mom trying to shove it under the rug, like we don't talk about that, and not, supporting my need to get mental health help, to get help for my mental health is, I think it was just fear. She had an uncle who passed away, who took his own life. And I really do believe now that it was just fear. She didn't know how to deal with it. So instead of trying to figure out how to deal with it, she just thought, we won't talk about it. And I think that's what her generation did. When there's something that they can't solve, they just don't want to think about it. So, yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what I'm saying. Older sibling says, I'm a suppressor too, but I was brought up that way. Exactly. You are a boomer. And even though my dad is not a baby boomer, my poor dad, he's like right before the baby boomers. But technically, I think he should be a baby boomer because my grandfather was in the military. All right. So in a way, I think, he's like an honorary baby boomer and he's almost 1976. But that's exactly it. They were all taught we don't talk about it. And I think back then it was because they didn't have anyone to talk about it with, right? I mean, if you really stop and think about it, I'm pretty sure psychology has been around forever. But modern psychology has only been around for about 130 years, roughly. And it might seem like a long time, but when you think back, oh, hey, wow, the last century was the 19th century, or the 20th century, the 1900s. And that's when it was really kind of forming, right? I mean, I talk about Carl Jung a lot. And Carl Jung died in the 60s, the 1960s, okay? So you see my point here? It's so new to a lot of people. And Sammy says it, the whole out of sight, out of mind thing. It's true. You push it down because, I don't think people knew how to deal with it, or you were crazy, or, you got thrown into a mental institution because, you were unruly. I mean, look what Joe Kennedy did to his daughter, all right? He gave her a freaking lobotomy. And there was probably nothing wrong with her. Maybe she was bipolar. I don't know. No one will know because he took her life away from her. Because people were afraid of mental health, and when people didn't get help, they didn't understand. When people didn't talk, they didn't understand. We have words for all these things now. We have nonverbal autism. We have autism. We have the spectrum. We have, the whole a rainbow of dinged up mental health, disorders. And the more we stop pushing it aside, the more we stop pretending it doesn't exist, the more we will start to relate to those around us and get them the help they need before it is too late. And actually, I never really truly believe it's too late, but when I say too late, I mean end game. I've said it before. I've had many close calls. We'll call them that, near misses, right? A lot of suicidal ideation, a lot of, I think they call them near attempts. That's what they call them, near attempts. And, I sat there. And like I said, 3 out of the 4 times divine intervention settled in. The 4th time I was like, I know what I'm doing. I'll share this with you. And I think I've shared it before. But after my friend passed away, after she took her own life, I struggled with that. I ended up back in therapy, as I said, 6 months of intensive therapy. I was ready anyway, and I was about to go back, but that was just like, oh my God, I really need to get in because I do not want to end up like this. And I knew about all my near attempts. So I made a promise to older sibling and baby sibling, because I will keep promises to other people. I tend to not keep them to myself. So I made it to them. I will not take my life. No matter how bad it gets, I will not take my life. I promise you. I promise, I promise, I promise. And so I realized there was a loophole. And one of the reasons I had gained so much weight is baby sibling and I were talking one day, and we realized I was trying to kill myself in a whole different way. I stopped caring. I just ate whatever I wanted to, didn't exercise, didn't do anything. And I called her up one day and I said, I really need to talk to you because I really need you to talk. I need you to walk me through this because, I was doing a lot of yes and no's with her, and she's very good at the yes and no's. And I asked her and I said, am I trying to take my own life in a different way? And she said, yes. And then she got mad. Well, she didn't get mad at me, but she's kind of she's like, what did you do? What are you doing? And I said, I'm eating. And emotional eating is a crutch of mine. I am a recovering emotional eater. I have a lot of recoveries. I am a recovering emotional eater. But she says, you need to stop, because if you keep going down this path, you will die. She's all, you will have a heart attack. Your heart cannot handle all that. And I said, I know. And I did start crying, and we both kind of cried together, and I told her, and then I went downstairs later and I told older sibling all this stuff. And I said, I realized that I had found the loophole. And I had to close up that loophole. And so once I had the acknowledgement of that, I realized, oh, but then here I was, right? Had gained all this weight. I will tell you straight out, I was about 287 pounds. And even I was like, I look back and I go, wow, Shelly Marie, you have a dinged up heart. It's repaired, it's running great, but why are you pushing it? Why are you pushing it to the limits, right? It's like trying to push a car with no oil in the car. What's going to happen? It's going to go kaput. So, not my finest moment. But I think maybe I'm sharing that now because if you have made that promise to someone, make sure you close up all the loopholes. All right? The world needs you. You may think it doesn't, but it does. To all the people who meet their end game, please don't shame them. I can't imagine how hard it must be to get to that end. Older sibling doesn't mind me sharing her story. She had 2 attempts. And I asked her, I said, what was that like? And it wasn't a morbid curiosity. It was more of a curiosity out of fear. And she says, there is nothing worse than waking up and knowing that you failed at something else. And she kind of got a little misty-eyed. And I don't know if she remembers this, but I looked at her and I was just like, I'm glad you failed. Because I can't imagine my life without you in it. And, I'm grateful that she failed. But my heart hurts for all the ones who were successful. Because they felt there was no way out. Because they felt alone. And, I think in a way I dedicate this episode to all of them. And to all the people who have attempted that have failed. Because I don't know if they ever reached out for help. I don't know if they ever got help. I don't know if they just couldn't anymore. But whatever reason that they met their final end, the world is a lesser place without them in it. But also, I hope they found their freedom in that. I'm a very spiritual person. I know of a person recently that this happened to, and I can feel their energy. I can feel their energy when I'm around their Tia. And it is a beautiful, beautiful energy. And it feels like freedom. So, you know, I think as much as we talk about mental health, we really need to find a way to understand it better. Even those of us with a dinged up mental health, you know, we have to learn to hold space. We can't heal we can't fix other people. We're not, what is it in the commercial I saw the other day? You're not a mechanic. You're not meant to fix them. No, but we can hold space for them. And sometimes that's all it takes, is just holding space for somebody. You know, holding that quiet space until they're ready to talk, or until they're ready to stand on their own 2 feet. And as a person with the dinged up mental health, you have to be willing to stand on your own 2 feet. Accept the support, accept the help, but know that these people can't hold space for you forever. At some point, you are going to have to do it yourself. And whatever it takes to do that, do it. Going through shadow work was the hardest thing in my entire life, ever. And I did it twice. One time I didn't realize I was doing it, but I have a feeling that my first therapist was very Jungian. By the way, I look back at her and go, wow, she was a follower of Carl Jung. And I wish she would have said something, because I love him. I love him. You know, everyone's always talking about Freud. But I love Carl Jung. He's great. He's great. I feel seen when I read about him and I watch videos about him. So yeah, let's just try to get out there and help people understand mental health awareness. You know, let's make them aware, right? Because it does matter. Mental health does matter, whether it's situational, whether it's chemical, whether it's whatever it is. You know, if you have a dinged up mental health, you deserve to be treated just like everybody else, but you also deserve that compassion on those moments when you're just kind of like, oh, when you feel discombobulated. When you feel like, wow, I don't know if I can do this today. Or when you're in that tornado of the spiral and you're that cow going in circles, right? So, yeah. So Allie, older sibling, Sammy, thank you for popping on. To my 2 girls that admitted to being suppressors of feelings, I get it. Like I said, I was one until I started my healing journey. And that helped me to stop suppressing it, because I was raised to suppress things, because the generation before me was raised to suppress things. You have tear ducts for a reason. Use them. They're not just to keep your eyes moist, all right? There's a reason when we have emotions that we cry. Don't hold them in. Let it out, whether it's happy tears or sad tears or angry tears or whatever kind of tears. A good soul cry sometimes is the best cry. And it's very cleansing, right? It's that water. It's cleansing. So, all right. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you back here tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, Facebook Live. All lives are public under Shelley Marie Lucas. You can find me across the social media board. Tomorrow is Self-Care Wednesday. Not sure what we're going to do yet, but it's either going to be the Mindful Messages cards or it's going to be something from the book. So, but it will be Self-Care Wednesday. I think after today and the deep, deep discussion we've had here, I think some self-care would be absolutely necessary for tomorrow. So again, my girls, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for being open and sharing. And thank you for being in my support group. I appreciate and love all of you, because I could not have made it this far without you. Even you, Allie. I know you and I are newer friends. You know, I've known these other 2 girls for decades at this point. But we're like kindred spirits. And, you know the girls now too. I am in your support group for all 3 of you. An older sibling, you always know you can talk to me. I know sometimes we can fall back on the excuse that this is how I was raised, but we get to be the people that break the cycles. And if there's someone who taught me how to break a cycle, that is older sibling. So, can't hide from that. Can't hide from your own advice, miss. So, have a wonderful day, everybody, and thank you again so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.